Eyjafjalla, Eyjafjallajökull. That's about as close as I'm going to get. Thoughts on Iceland? This is a beautiful country, and obviously this wasn't an outdoor trip. It was a family trip that had to do a lot with the outdoors, which I think is kind of the character of Iceland. It's so dramatic. It's so focused on ecology and natural preservation. There's a culture here that recognizes the value of what they've got, and it's accessible. You can do what we did, where we base camped in several locations around just the southern half of the country and hopped around to see all of the primary touristy sites. But even the touristy sites are out there a little bit, right? You can do what a lot of people do, the full ring road in camper vans, and they'll just go all the way around the island and stay wherever their gas takes them. There's a lot of that. Or you can go into the interior and go backpacking, or in the colder months, cross-country skiing, that kind of thing. Granted that I've only seen it during the summer. I'm sure it is a land of two personalities. But what we've seen in the summer has been absolutely gorgeous. It's really interesting geologically. It's this whole land of fire and ice thing. It's volcanic, right? So at times the landscape reminds me of Hawaii. At times it reminds me of the desert southwest of the U.S., and that depends on where you are in terms of how much rainfall it gets. Central south, I'll say 100 kilometers east of Reykjavik, where there's not necessarily a lot of rain, you get this aspect of desert southwest where the long gradual slopes, you see some of this on Golden Circle, long gradual slopes with the slump angle of things that have just eroded off of the mountains. And then elsewhere, there's a waterfall everywhere you turn with deep cut eroded valleys. The other aspect is glaciation. You've got current glaciers that cover, I think I heard, 17% of the island. But then, of course, you have ice age remnants too that cut the mounds of volcanic rock into sheer-sided vertical cliffs, which gives rise to all these dramatic waterfalls. So geologically, that's, you're either looking at glaciers or volcanoes, and sometimes it's both, and you can see the fingerprint of both. Because, of course, all of the vegetation is completely different. There's hardly any trees. I'm sitting here now in a little, forest, if you this is about as dense as it gets, and this is rare. It's mostly grassland or just lava bed, but other than that, it looks very similar. So really cool in that regard. And of course, the waterfalls they get so plentiful you lose count. It's gorgeous. If I were to come back, I would. We've already talked about doing a stopover in the darker months because we want to see the northern lights. If you're traveling to Europe from the U.S., Iceland Air has a deal where basically you can stop over in Iceland without any additional airfare. Say if you're going to Paris or whatnot. I would say take advantage of that. At least spend a couple of days here, even if you only get out to the Golden Circle. See what you can and enjoy Iceland from that regard. No additional airfare. You can spend a couple extra days here and add to your trip. That would be a cool option. So we're talking about maybe doing that in the winter and seeing what that's like, and then we can get out on a glacier and go do some ice caves and that kind of thing, which is only available in the wintertime. I also want to come back and spend some time in the interior. I'm really intrigued by the Laugavík. It's only 35-40 miles-ish, but that would be an awesome through hike based on what I saw. Might be a little too popular for my taste. A lot of people, at least near where I was, it's hard to say whether that would continue the whole way. And we've only seen, roughly a third of the country, and that's being generous. We didn't get very far north. We didn't get into the fjordlands. We didn't see, But for all that, we saw a lot. And we saw some good wildlife, seals, countless birds. We saw puffins. We didn't get to see any whales. We did see an Arctic fox. And the Icelandic culture is great, too. Very friendly. Very connected. right? It's Wi-Fi everywhere and a cashless country. They've got the little electronic credit card readers everywhere. Even in the remotest places, we were able to run a credit card, which is kind of cool. Everybody speaks English, and they only make fun of you a little bit. I've enjoyed trying to learn how to pronounce Icelandic, as you've probably picked up on. I'm not that great at it. My mouth just doesn't want to move that way for the double L's and go like yokur, 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 or thingvid, thingvid. Yeah, it's hard. But I've enjoyed that. Getting to know that and kind of interacting with the people here a little bit, even if it's just joking around the language and learning about how they spend their dark winters. And you're almost got to be two people here. It's summer. You try to fit everything in that you can, and then winter you just hunker down and wait. For that matter, the astronomy has been an interesting twist for me. Never saw a star because we've never been out of daylight. The sun did technically set while we were here, but it was just below the horizon for a couple of hours, and it never got out of twilight. Interesting when you start thinking of the geometry of the planet and what's going on there. And anyway, I found that intriguing. But honestly, I'm ready to get back to where there's some dark. That day-night cycle. Bit of advice if you're coming here during the summer, really make sure you've got a way to make your room dark at night, or your cabin dark at night. Most of these places have really thick blackout curtains or good shades. Adjust your circadian rhythm. Pull the shades at 8 p.m. because by the time you want to go to bed around 10 or 11, you can't just pull the shades then and expect your body to go, okay, bedtime. That's a consideration in a tent as well. If you're camping, it would be hard to make that dark. So, some of those sleep shades or something to get adjusted and get your body to start thinking, okay, nighttime, time to go to bed. We alternated 5 hours of sleep one night, 12 hours of sleep the next. 5 hours, we couldn't sleep at all, and then the next night we'd be so exhausted we'd sleep forever. It was without cues to either wake up or go to bed. It's hard, harder than I thought it would be to make that adjustment. It's expensive. Just understand that it's gonna be. It's honestly not quite as expensive as you think it will be. The exchange rate right now, I think, is about 72 US cents to 100 Icelandic kroner. So if you take a price in kroner, let's say 3,000 kroner, the easy math is to just divide by 100 and say that's $30. Well, it's really only about 3/4 of that, right? It's still expensive. Now, for all of that, the food was really good. I don't think we ever were really disappointed with spending money for food. We were disappointed in the amount we were spending, but we never ate anything and said, ugh, grocery stores, take advantage of them. Bonus and Cronin, both fairly decent prices, and we took advantage of that in buying stuff to make sandwiches or just munch on while we were out and about. Have a picnic alongside the road at one of the many available pull-off areas. So I think we successfully only ate out once a day. We were buying breakfast and typically lunch stuff in the grocery store, and we cooked one night here in our cabin. So you can adjust your food budget a little bit. Iceland is, like I said before, it's accessible outdoors, and it's really dramatic, and it's a completely different landscape than I think most of us have experienced. And so for all of that, it's really worth coming out and seeing. And again, I'm torn. I'd love to do the whole ring road. There's an industry that's kind of based around using the road as a backbone for your explorations and then going off to either side of that. There's value to that, right? There's so much that's so accessible from that main ring road that it's very popular for a reason. On the other hand, I want to get back into the backcountry a little bit more, and you can do that here too. It was really, really a good trip. I can't say enough about how enjoyable it is to take a family vacation that is focused on being outside the whole time and enjoying nature. I did see tourists tearing up the place. Um, it's frustrating. It's annoying, when there are little, ropes, signs, don't go here, all of that marked off to try to keep people on paths because, it's easy to say, I'm not going to have much impact. I know what I'm doing. But when you get 1,000 people doing that over the course of a couple of days, things get torn up fairly quickly. And so it's really annoying to me to see a group of tourists basically act like none of that applies to them. And if I just go over this rope and go 10 feet this way, I'll get a better picture. Several spots, again, because they're kind of the touristy spots, there was a lot of Instagram posing going on. I guess I'm somewhat guilty of that in filming it, but I'd like to think I'm not trying to contribute to all of the influencer culture. And I'm certainly not going to tear up the landscape so that I can get a like. It's just not, think of the long view, guys. Like I mentioned, there was the one canyon, how do you say it? Fjadraglufur? Fjadraglufur. That is the canyon that Justin Bieber did a video in. They had to completely shut it down. Once people discovered that existed, they flocked the place, they tore it up, and you could still see evidence of having torn it up, even though they, Icelandic Parks Authority, or whatever you want to call it, came in, put down a gravel path, built a structure, a way to get out over this canyon without walking on the tundra grass and without trampling everything. And while we were there were still tourists scoping the place out, trying to figure out how can I get over this railing to get out to that point to stand in that spot because that'll be a better picture. Come on, guys. So if I was annoyed by anything, it was the people who visit, despite the best efforts of the people who are here. And that's one of those situations that people in their own selfishness are going to ruin what's here for the rest of us. And things will be shut down and inaccessible. And then all that's here sort of be lost. I mean, for its own good, but unavailable to the rest of us. The other disappointing thing to learn is just how fast the glaciers are receding. A lot of glaciers here, and of the two that we saw that were accessible, one in the lagoon is retreating. I'm not going to try to say the name of it, but out at Jökulsárlón, that's retreating about 600 meters a year. And the Solheima Jökull, has retreated about 3/4 of a mile in the last 18 years. The locals here know that something's changing because they see it every day. And I think there's value in personally coming out here and making the effort to see places that are impacted by changes to the climate, to understand the day-to-day impact that it has on the environment, on the people. It's easy to sit in air-conditioned comfort in a city somewhere and minimize it and trivialize it. When you can see the effects of it like you can here, it just sort of drives the point home that something's going on. Driving in Iceland is straightforward and easy, particularly if you're from a country that drives on the right-hand side of the road. Iceland does as well. So if you're used to that, if you're from North America, not a problem at all. You just adjust to thinking in kilometers instead of miles, and that's pretty easy to do. Lots of rental cars and lots of four-wheel drive vehicles available. like I say, they may be unusual brands. We've been driving a Dacia Duster. Dacia, I think, is a Renault subsidiary that is built in Romania. So we've been driving a Romanian car built or managed by a French company in Iceland, and it's a manual shift, four-wheel drive, sport crossover SUV. And that's about the biggest. I mean, you see the big Toyota Land Cruisers and every once in a while, and of course the camper vans, but most of the cars are top out at about the Duster size. That's the common. You don't see the huge gas guzzling, F-250s and whatnot like you would see at home, my home out in the U.S. Of course, gas prices. It's about like what I would see at home, only it's per liter instead of per gallon. So, we're talking $2.20 US per liter. It is very easy to top $100 just putting in half a tank. So keep that in mind too. Gas is not cheap. So beautiful country, great experience. You don't have to try very hard to see a lot of really dramatic stuff that I think most of us are not accustomed to seeing. And that's what makes for a great vacation. Like I say, I've sort of added to my bucket list of additional things I want to do, and it involves coming back to Iceland. There's a lot here. I could spend some time here. It's a great place. So hope you've enjoyed some of the footage I've put together. Hopefully it works out, 'cause I don't really know. I've just been sort of pointing and shooting, and when I'm with my family, I don't tend to narrate very much. I don't tend to really talk or think about what I'm seeing, so it comes out different. That's okay. We'll see how it works, but hope it's enjoyable. And if you get a chance, come to Iceland. Troy for Flying Squirrel. I'll see you next time. AF Yakla Yoku. AF Yakla Yoku. AF Yakla Yoku.